having trouble getting into the meeting.
Oh, wow.
Well, tell him he's not getting any money then.
That's right.
Huh.
All right, I see we are live on YouTube. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Senate's Committee on Institutions, the Vermont State Senate, that is. Today is April the 1st, 2021. I am Joe Benning, your host and chair of the Institutions Committee. I represent the Caledonia District, which includes all of Caledonia County and the 6 northeastern towns in Orange County. We also have on the committee Senator McCormick from Windsor, Senator Mazza from Grand Isle, Senator Parent from Franklin, Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans. And our committee assistant is Denise Dale. She is also with us, but she's currently off the screen. We are here to talk about a couple of different things this afternoon, and witnesses, this is just for your edification. We are live on YouTube, which means we have no idea who is going to be watching us at what point in time, including today. But what I try to do is make sure everybody knows we are talking at the very ground level of whatever conversations we are having. So if you are using vernacular that we may be familiar with, but I think may not be utilized by the regular public in their normal course of events, then I'll probably interrupt you and ask you to explain what X, Y, or Z is. The other thing is we have 3 new committee members, although one has been on the committee previously. One of those 3 is a brand new legislator, so the same goes. We are trying to make everybody up to speed and up to snuff the same way we would be introducing things literally from scratch. With that having been said, Mike DeBonis, you are here as Executive Director of the Green Mountain Club. You're the first person up on my list for this afternoon. Committee, we're talking about Section 9.
That's that unstable.
Yeah. I move we adjourn.
Second.
I was going to say that, but I didn't know if that was really something
April
that
Fool.
we were going to have to. Yeah, there we go. That saved us.
Same thing.
Have you? Well, never mind. I was going to talk about your car. We'll wait another time.
Okay. Well, Dick, you might as well take over. You're froze. Dick, yeah, you're not coming through.
He's mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm here. Yeah, here we go.
Oh, looks like Joe is back.
Yes, Joe is back. And
Or is he frozen again? He's not moving.
Am I back yet or no?
There you go.
Yes,
Yes,
you're
you
here.
are.
We adjourned while you were gone.
Yeah, it was an April Fool's joke on my part. I don't know where we got to, but I was in the middle of saying something. And so something must have happened because I see that Mike has given us a PowerPoint presentation or a memo.
yes, I just brought it up.
When we
Yeah, we're
started,
just waiting for you, Joe. We
when
haven't.
we started this
Chair.
long trail, I was a little kid when I started Junk Trail with Senator Gannett. So someday they're going to say we're completed because I've been working on this now for about 35 years. So
Sure takes you a long time to get a project
God,
done.
I promised Senator Gannett I'd never let up on it. And boy, I'll tell you, this has been seriously, I think it's been a good 30 years or better, you know.
Well, the way my internet's going, it might be another 30 years before we get this conversation done. So Mike, while I'm still on, take it away, buddy.
Thank you, Senator. And for the record, my name is Mike DeBonis. I'm the Executive Director of the Green Mountain Club. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. Thank you, Chairman Benning and members of the committee. Just for those folks watching on YouTube, Green Mountain Club, we're a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1910, and we manage the Long Trail system, the oldest long distance hiking trail in the nation, 273-mile trail that runs from the Canadian border to Massachusetts. When I was here in January, I provided some more background on the Green Mountain Club and the Long Trail Protection Program. That's in my written testimony that's on the screen. I won't go through all that, but I'll just hit a few highlights. Green Mountain Club launched the Long Trail Protection Campaign in 1986, and through the last 35 years in partnership with the General Assembly, private landowners, the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, and partner organizations, we've protected over 88 miles of the Long Trail, conserved more than 25,000 acres of land. Over 17,500 acres have been added to the Vermont State Forest System, and the General Assembly has contributed an amazing $3.5 million in appropriations funding through the state's capital bill. There are approximately 6 miles, 6.28, I think to be exact, of Long Trail left to protect over a dozen separate properties with a total estimated cost of $1.5 million. In 2019, the General Assembly generously provided $130,000 for the Cotting Hollow Long Trail Acquisition Project. This 160-acre property that straddles the Johnson-Waterville town line hosts a third of a mile of the Long Trail. This property was successfully conserved in the fall of 2020, with the land being added to the Long Trail State Forest, which is managed by the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation. And the opportunity that I'm here to talk to you about today. Last year, the club was in negotiations with a landowner in Johnson that had potential to be an exciting addition to the Long Trail State Forest and a key piece of land in the club's effort to protect the Long Trail and provide much needed trailhead parking in Johnson. At the end of 2020, the club, in partnership with the Trust for Public Land, purchased a 12.9-acre Judavine property. This parcel hosts a log landing that will become trailhead parking, Long Trail treadway, and forest land around the Long Trail. The Green Mountain Club is seeking a legislative appropriation of $85,000, which includes 75% of the land purchase price and a portion of project and closing costs, establishment of a trailhead parking area and that log landing, and a contribution to the state's stewardship fund. The club and Trust for Public Land will cover 25% of the land purchase price, project management costs, and the Green Mountain Club's easement stewardship funds. A copy of the budget's been submitted along with my testimony, a full copy of the budget. The project has been developed in careful coordination with the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation and has district and state office support for the land to become part of Long Trail State Forest. The Green Mountain Club has been working to protect this portion of the Long Trail for 34 years. This 12.9-acre parcel is a small but important piece of trail land that'll help close a longstanding gap in the Long Trail corridor in northern Vermont and bring us closer to our shared goal of forever protecting the Long Trail system. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So the first question I have, Mike, is the governor's didn't recommend anything to the Green Mountain Club for this project, and you managed to get 85 grand out of the House committee, I see. What is your secret to having so much pull with our compatriots in the House?
No secret. I think it's all chalked up to work that was done many decades before I got here. The General Assembly had the wisdom to make a commitment to protecting the Long Trail and have maintained that commitment over many decades. And we're just appreciate that commitment remains. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to close this and achieve our goal. But it's been 34 years so far. I know Senator Mazza wants to be done with.
I've given up everything I've ever had for this. 84, you said 84, because I came to the Senate in 85. So okay,
Committee, other questions, comments?
Yes, Mr.
Chairman
Chairman,
McCormick, yes, sir.
thanks. Can you locate me? Let's say I'm heading north on the Long Trail and I get to the highway there by the Lamoille River. Okay, where do I go to get to this site?
Yeah, so you're going to keep traveling north, and you go over Prospect Rock, and you go past Round Top Shelter. You come down, and you're going to hit a road called Plot Road, and this is just north of Plot Road.
So I've gone back into the woods after crossing the river.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm continuing, north. All right.
Yeah.
I'm past Larrabee.
I think it's south of Laraway.
Okay, Laraway, sorry. Yeah, all right, I got a sense of about where it is then. Okay,
So Denise,
all
I'm
I
assuming
want.
you're scrolling on this
Yeah,
screen right now. Mike, can you talk to us about the total amount that was, no, I'm not seeing, this is 12.9 acres in Johnson. The total amount is bigger than the request. I'm trying to figure out where that comes in. Have you already done some of this work?
So the total project cost, everything rolled together, is $167,820, and that includes the acquisition cost, includes all of the project costs associated with acquiring the property, working with the landowner, all of the associated project costs like that you would normally have with a real estate transaction, like the survey, title, closing costs, environmental analysis. This project is a little different than some of the other long trail protection projects that we've done in the past. That it has a parking lot cost in it. And there's currently a log landing off Plot Road, which I think will continue to be used as a log landing by the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, but it will be converted into a much needed trailhead parking lot. So it's a capital cost. It's an investment of parking lot that is new, different, I should say, than what we've done in past projects. And then there's a state stewardship contribution of $20,000, and that's also new from past projects. That's a cost that funding that goes to the state for their long-term stewardship of these properties that come under their management. And that we didn't have that on the last project, which is the Cotting Hollow project, and that was a new element that was added this year.
Other questions, comments? If not, Commissioner Schneider, I have you next on my list. I'm assuming you're okay with this proposal.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Unless he gets the money instead, he would change his mind if he got the money.
Yes, as I indicated in the House, indeed, Mike has it all right. Our partnership is very long and good and important, and we totally support this request. Yeah, we're quite good with it and eager to see the whole thing completed. Green Mountain Club, as I say, longstanding partner with in a really strong and powerful way, that the missions are aligned and it works well. And we really want to see this thing done as well. But for Senator Mazza's benefit, I would add, yeah, we're not recommending that this come out of our capital allocation.
Mr. Chair, I want you to know Mike Snyder wants to take over your whole trail and take care of your Lamoille Valley Trail there. He said he financed it all out of his budget, keep it mowed, cleaned, everything. So just in case that's in your district.
Yeah, well, we haven't talked yet about what he's going to do next. He's going to connect the bottom of that trail in a fishhook fashion through St. Johnsbury and up through Lindenville to connect with Kingdom Trails.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Yeah.
We'll talk more about that.
Trails. Where's that? Another trail?
Yeah, we'll talk more about that next year.
Okay. All right.
Look forward to it.
Commissioner, I have you down as major maintenance for state parks here this afternoon. And it looks
Yes.
to me like we're sending you quite a bit of money.
no,
I hope so.
Yes. Shall I speak to it just generally? I mean, we did.
I want to start by saying, in comparison to Mike, the bonus, apparently you had a higher ask than the House was willing to give you. So I'm wondering why you slipped and he was managing to pull out 85,000 while
Right.
you slipped down a little bit. What happened?
Well, I'll take a shot at it. I mean, I was there, and we were, as they were,
Talk to Alice.
yeah, as the committee was working through it and markup, they were discussing it. I monitored on YouTube, and had it been in the room, normally we would have just kind of discussed it, but I did. They had some questions, and I offered, and so Representative Emmons was kind enough to invite me in the next day. Frank and I joined by the way, for the record, Michael Snyder, Commissioner, Forest Parks and Recreation, along with Frank Spalding from Parks Projects Manager. My sense was, honestly, I feel like they were seeing it from the starting point of, well, this is, significantly more than what you had in the last capital cycle, as if that represents some sort of base funding. And so it was hard for them to understand we would have, 6 million and then go to 10 plus, and wanted to make the point that, well, actually, we've made requests since I've been here that our initial request has always been much more, and we've come in. So we're pleased, and we've done a lot with what you've given us, what the governors have authorized, and what you've allocated. You've seen it, that, you've heard the story. It's really good, but it's not keeping up. If you consider the total value, the replacement value of our assets, which are significant, and the recapitalization rate and best practices, we should be at about 7 million per year, not 5 million per year. So we've asked for more. We've just always been under. We've taken one for the team a few times with the Irene recovery and the state complex, and we've got this long pipeline. So we're just coming back with an honest recommendation, and this time Governor Scott said, let's do it. And so it's significantly up, but it's not out of proportion to what we've asked for in the past or what we need. And we've demonstrated an ability to spend, and we've also seen impact of these investments. When we last had a big jump in capital, it's 2009, we've seen a 40% increase in visitation since that time as we've continued to invest. There's a direct correlation in these investments to visitation, revenues, and in some ways we reduce expenses by being smart and getting out ahead of costly shutdowns and emergency fixes, particularly in our water and wastewater systems, that would then have a further impact of revenue reductions when we have to close a park in the middle of the season. So I think it's really reflecting that there's a lot of asks. Ours seem to be so significantly up that I think that they questioned that. I took a shot at trying to explain it, and they still dinged us. And so my request respectfully is that you'd see it differently and get us what we've asked for and what the governor has supported in our sort of getting to a more normal and legitimate capital appropriation for particularly parks infrastructure. That's my take. We're happy to walk you through it with details, et cetera.
Well, I'd like to take a look at some of those details. I'm just ribbing you because it's April 1st and Mike DeBonis apparently has some kind of brilliant strategy on how to get money, because he started out with 0 and ended up with 85.
Right.
You started out high and got dinged. So I'm wondering what his strategy is that he's so successful.
But what is the ding? What did he get him share Benning? What did it go down to?
I've got it as the original request was 10 million. You're down to 9, a little under 9.5.
Right. I mean, honestly, it was, not to over dramatize. It's not like they took us back to the last cycle. It's still significant and we appreciate it. But that, I think that's my understanding.
Senator Mazza.
I can tell you that in Mike's behalf here, Mike Snyder, the state parks have got a lot of use last year, and they're going to get a lot of use this year. And you got to maintain them. They're a hell of a draw for the state of Vermont. I know in my district, and I know everybody has some in their district, but there's a lot of people and that's without the Canadian business last year. You can imagine if that opens up, what's going to happen. But they bring a lot of money in this state. I support you, and I think that's why the governor did it also, is economic development on we talk about bringing people here. The park's got a lot, and I think you want to build some cottages this year, right? Or some more overnights or something.
Yes, this is the major maintenance line. We do have a special request per the governor for another investment into the cabins, which are very popular and have a better rate of return. So that, especially when you change out underperforming tent sites, and meet modern demands. So yeah, that's another line in the capital for additional cabins. Yeah, it's a part of a package of putting people to work, Vermont contractors to work, sort of near-term economic recovery with a longer-term economic development benefit. We do have one study indicating $90+ million of related spending annually to parks visitation. So, that's in addition to the 8 million of our direct revenue generation within the parks that we use to operate the parks. There's that related spending. And so, yeah, it's been noticed. And, in a pandemic with interstate travel restrictions and all kinds of social distancing and other measures, we had 750,000 visitors. There's only 625,000 of us. What's that?
How many parks do we have?
55, built, operated, developed parks.
55. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. A lot of staff.
The state of Virginia has 34. I mean, it's we have this is a complex business enterprise operated within state government with massive positive benefits all around.
But Virginia is for lovers, you got to get a catchy phrase like that, and maybe we can get some more folks to visit. Senator McCormick.
I also just want to add that I think Vermont state parks, I think I mentioned this once before, really are exceptional. Cindy and I have camped in other states. New York does a good job. The Adirondacks camping grounds are nice, but Vermont has it all over Pennsylvania, all over Michigan, certainly.
Thank you.
Really, really good. Yeah.
I appreciate hearing it. We hear it from others. The proof's in the pudding. They are a raging success and quite popular. We need to figure out midweek. Frankly, we are our booking rates are the end of the hospitality industry, but like them, midweek is a struggle. So we're working on ways to package things and looking at different approaches, but. Otherwise, you can't get a campsite. It's 11 months in advance. They're booked pretty much throughout. On weekends, all the holidays are already booked. It's amazing. And it's for good reason. They're wonderful places. They're historic. They're in lovely settings. We take good care of them, and we have great staff that are trained for customer experience. And, I know Senator Parent has had some trouble out there, but otherwise, we do okay.
Increase every year. What do you increase the fees every year? A certain percentage, or?
No, we don't actually every year. We try not to. We want to sort of track regionally to be not the most expensive, but not the cheapest. We kind of pay close attention. We also, have to try to track costs like any business would. So it's been every few years we might raise some aspect of visitation. Say day use. We didn't touch that for many, many years. A few years ago, we upped it by a couple bucks. Tent sites and lean-tos, we update every once in a while by $2-3 per. But with that many number in the system, that translates to additional, hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional revenue. So when we make a few dollar increase, it's real. But we don't do it every year, and we try to track regional trends. We track costs of operation and fairly pass that along. But we don't want to create a barrier to entry. And in fact, it's been a goal of ours for a long time to find a way that we could at least make day use, not overnight camping, but day use, which are very popular beaches, et cetera, free for anybody with a green license plate. This has been a goal of mine. And, but that's $2.5-3 million we got to figure out. But how wonderful would that be if we could just say, come on in, you're a Vermonter, enjoy the park.
Senator McCormick.
Yeah. Are you anticipating in the coming years an increase at the state by the campgrounds? What I'm thinking is I've spent my life hiking, pack on my back and hiking. And now that my knees are arthritic and stiff and painful, we've discovered car camping. And I see that as something with the aging of the population.
Right.
I imagine that a lot of other people are doing a similar kind of thing.
Yes, and so we are sort of keenly aware of these kind of trends and try to track with them. That's really the genesis of the cabin program, was realizing that as folks were aging, they were less interested in sleeping on the ground. And these cabins, are these simple structures, 4-sided with little electricity, a porch, screens. They're extremely popular for that reason. And we want to, so we've added parks. So that's one other way, is just to add, in my time, we've added a few parks. We're limited, and within any given park, we can't just keep adding sites. It's largely limited by wastewater capacity. And we want to manage the visitor experience. We don't want people camping on top of each other. So within those constraints, we try to think about adjusting, adding, adjusting, changing. And one area for me right now is thinking about increasing operation, having a strategic approach to increasing operations in the winter, or at least fall and spring, just more year round. There's climate change and there's just more interest, and perhaps there's some revenue ideas, opportunities for us to start thinking of winter operations when we make capital investments. So for example, when we're building cabins, Frank's thinking about now making them so they might be convertible into at least 3 seasons down the road. And being smart about when we invest now to kind of expand operations, always looking for new opportunities for people to come enjoy the parks, but also doing it in a business smart way.
So you need midweek reservations. Do you advertise to niche groups? Take bicyclists, for instance, having some kind of a package deal for them to attract them midweek?
We do all of the above. We don't have a budget. We have zero marketing, but our people do an amazing job of creative, innovative, and effective marketing without that kind of marketing approach. And yeah, there's a variety of ways that we interact with user groups and try to stimulate that. Another one, we're working with the Department of Financial Regulation right now, asking them to use their expertise to do kind of a regional benchmarking study of what are the best opportunities for changing our rate structure and our ability to generate revenues. For example, think dynamic pricing. This is one area where midweek it's like an airline. It depends on it's supply and demand, and there's dynamic pricing in the airlines. Like when you buy a ticket, it's not always the same price. It depends on what's going on, right? Well, we might be thinking of something similar for parks reservations, that midweek would be cheaper. And sort of we're asking them to do this analysis and give a report back to us, so that the next time, Senator Mazza, we go forward with a proposal to maybe raise rates, we do it differently. We might do it more intelligently. And again, this is all sort of a business sense of what's the return of investment? How long is that payback period? And what are we seeing in terms of a response? So it's exciting and it's fun. And but those are all pieces that I use the midweek thing as one classic challenge that everyone faces. And we are bringing, I think, creative approaches to marketing towards it, and then also thinking differently about how we structure our rate structures.
I'm just thinking that for tourism purposes, you've got advertising dollars in the tourism arena that, if spent properly, I think the governor used this example once before, that there were manufacturers that needed to have workers, and the advertisements were placed in bicycling magazines, and people were attracted to the area where those things were likely to be.
Exactly.
Throw a package together for metal detectorists and give them a permit to go dig holes on your land. We'll come. You give it, we'll come.
There we go.
Here it is.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Oh, no, he's got you now. He want to help. Yeah. If he comes in with his little thing there, you better let him in. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
They only want 20%. They only want 20% of the take, Joe.
That's right.
That's right.
We've got posters of Senator Benning in all the parks now.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Those same posters are in the post office. Michael, what else can you tell us about what's going on with major maintenance?
Well, we can tell you a lot. I mean, Frank would be teed up here. I think could explain. Maybe it's helpful for you to hear the kinds of projects, what we do. Major maintenance includes basically 4 categories of projects: small, deft, deployable, kind of basic stuff. And then there's wastewater, water and wastewater, roads. And then we have kind of this major projects, which are, completely renovating a beach house. Albert Dunes State Park recently went through a major makeover with parking, stormwater, beach access, a new bath facility. So what we do basically with the capital is around the state in the 55 parks in a range of sort of project scale, type and scale, where we sort of all per a long list, ongoing kind of spreadsheet of needs that we prioritize and rank, and then try to move the money around again in these several different categories of project, try to have geographic distribution, and whereby we push out this money through local contractors and get stuff done, and have to do a dance, frankly, around the operating season, the construction season being, sort of fall through spring. And so there's cash flow, there's planning. And I just use this as a chance to remind you that for our capital approach, we very much appreciate, kind of a bulk number and not having a line item for this number of doorknobs and that number of shingles. We need that flexibility to deal with the market conditions, contractor availability, weather, operating. So that's kind of the big picture, I'd say, of the overall for major maintenance and how we deploy it. It's just fundamentally important. That's the thing I'd want you to is remember, these were generally built in the CCC era and with another pulse in the 60s, largely, which means they're old. And there's a lot of care and feeding involved and required. And we've done well with your support to deploy that kind of capital infrastructure money intelligently in all these good ways, and it's paying off. And but I think the point of a $280-something million replacement value portfolio, considering how things work, again, it's a $7 million a year need, and we've been chunking along at about 3.5 per year. So we're just thrilled that the governor saw our request this time and said, now's the time to do it. Let's do it. And put us in for 10 million plus in this category. We're ready to spend it. We have the projects to do. And we demonstrate the payback for those investments.
Heard this story before in some other area. Oh, no, wait, that's tomorrow's discussion with the treasurer on the pension plan. We'll talk more about that.
I want to give you what you need. Maybe I can invite Frank. Is there something that you'd want to add here about the nature of this category for us, Frank, or anything in particular you think I've missed?
I don't think you've missed anything, Commissioner. I think the one point I would stress and hopefully put the committee at ease on is the fact that we are ready to spend this money. We have already advertised and put projects out to bid in anticipation of much of this money. What we have learned through the years since 2009, when we've had that first big slug of capital, is how important maintaining a pipeline of projects is. And we have a pipeline of projects ready to go. I was just looking, we have about $13 million of large scale projects at various stages of advancement that we are ready to execute when the money comes. Our partners at Facilities Engineering Division and Engineering section within Department of Environmental Conservation has a list of water and sewer projects prioritized and ready to go. They're putting them out to bid in anticipation of much of this funding, because now is when we need to bid them to be ready to construct them when the parks close in the fall. We got to get the contractors on the hook for these projects. So we are already hitting the ground running, and we're ready to keep running and get it done. And if there's anything I can add, it would be to reassure you that we have our ducks in a row and we're ready to go.
So with the loss of $500,000 from the governor's recommend, is there any of those projects that you've committed to that are now having to take a pause on?
Up in Lamoille, up in Lindenville area.
That's a great question. I'm hoping that I was wondering, Frank, what would come off the list if we were dinged by that amount?
So the ding actually comes in the second year of the biennium. The way the House allocated the cash, the first year is held whole. The second year is when the ding comes. So we're not bidding projects that are 2 years out right now. We're bidding the ones that are slated to go up next year, this season. Very likely, as we prioritize projects, where we're going to fall off is those opportunities for advancing programming and the larger projects, because that kind of money is usually the first to fall off, is those larger initiatives, and that's unfortunate. But that things like a large water systems now are a $500,000 project. Renovating a park beach area, for example, like the Bombazine area that was recently renovated a few years ago, was a $1.1 million job. a cut like this cuts into those kinds of jobs.
My only offer of suggestion would be if you got one of those jobs in the Springfield area, you might want to target that one first. So we'll let the Springfield representative know about that somewhere down the road.
Well, it's funny, we did a major,
Yeah, we'll have some fun with this one.
we've done some really nice work at Mount Ascutney State Park, and I think that there are certain people that know about that. Maybe we need another one, Frank.
Well, ironically, the Mount Ascutney replacement sewage system is out to bid right now, along with the water system for improvement. So
We're on the warpath because they took our walleye guys' money away, and we're still trying to figure out how to strategically. We'll have a good battle with them.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
We'll have fun.
I've told you before, but I'll just mention again, Wilgus
Yes.
State Park is a nice experience too.
Thank you. Yeah, you did, and it was a very
Yep.
kind message you gave me, and passed it on to the staff, and they were extremely appreciative. They
Where's
live
that?
for that. That's what they do.
Where's that, Dick?
Yeah. It's right on the Connecticut River, sandwiched between Route 5 and the Connecticut River, just south of Ascutney, south of Ascutney Village,
Huh.
north
It
of
is great.
Springfield.
That is a great spot, but getting into the river is a little interesting when you're
It
trying
can
to
be,
go
yes.
swimming there.
Well, we canoed in. We had put in way up south of White River Junction, and then we canoed down.
Yep.
It was
Well,
nice.
we were camped there and decided we wanted to go swimming. The beer made it easier to get into the water, but getting back up was a little problematic.
I could listen to Vermont State Park stories all day long. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, you do a good job, Mike. You do a great job.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate it.
Very true.
Well, thank you very much for coming. We'll see what we can do about trying to make some adjustments here.
Okay.
I don't know if you're interested in the next subject or not. Are we going to have a new state park surrounding a certain ferry boat being sunk into Lake Champlain?
I have interest, so keep me posted, but I do have an appointment to get to, so I'll leave you to that. And, but thanks very much for the time and your consideration here. Let us know if you need any follow-up or info. We're happy to supply it.
Will do. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you all. Take care.
thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
Jonathan Eddy, I see you're on the screen. We don't see you yet.
There I am.
There you are.
Okay.
Welcome to Senate Institutions. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Were you here once before to talk about this? Or did we
Yes,
have-
yeah, I was. It was a great dry run. I don't testify often, so getting some of that initial anxiety out was great. I understand there was a bit of a power failure in Montpelier that threw everything in disarray, but we're back today to give it another try.
So you had your dry run on a boat we're going to sink. Is that the way it works?
Yes, but
No,
that's
it's
the
April
hope.
Fools. It's April Fools. We're stretching for humor this afternoon.
Okay, well, I'll provide what humor I can.
Okay, you weren't here earlier when I was giving the explanation, but again, we are on YouTube. There's a lot of people that have never been here before that could be watching.
Mhm.
We have 3 committee members who are new to the committee, one of whom has had to take a break. That would be Senator Parent from Franklin. He may come back to join us. We also have at least one new legislator to the experience, but for the benefit of everybody, we try to keep things at a grassroots level and talk about the very basics. So if you're using vernacular that may be familiar to us, but I sense might be not familiar to anybody who's in the audience, I'll probably interrupt you and ask you to explain what that is. But I do understand our compatriots in the House decided not to go along with the request to sink the Adirondack.
Yes.
And I want to go back in time to your first conversation where we were talking about the environmental action that was necessary to have this proposal even considered. And we may have some more conversation about that in the future, but from your perspective, if you could just back us up to the beginning, start with the ideas, concept from initiation, and we'll go forward from there.
Okay, great. I've prepared some comments. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate it. At first, I wanted to give a little background on why I was asked to be here, and then I'd like to provide a brief overview of where the Adirondack project is at this point, and then a brief explanation of what we feel the benefits of the project are. I expect it'll take about 10 minutes or so. Is that work for you folks?
Yeah, that's perfect. We'll add another minute on there so you can introduce who you are and what you do.
Okay, my name's Jonathan Eddy. I do have a few comments. I've been a long time resident of Burlington. In fact, my family's had a place on Lake Champlain since the late 1890s, and I've spent at least a part of every year of my life both recreating and working on Lake Champlain. I started my diving adventures on Lake Champlain 51 years ago, and for the past 31 years, I've been owner of Waterfront Diving Center here in Burlington. And for those 31 years that I've been owner of Waterfront, I've also participated in a lot of different projects on the lake in kind of different areas or different disciplines, I guess I would say. I've been a volunteer diver on several nautical archaeology projects for the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum. I've been a deckhand and a volunteer diver on our research vessel Neptune for the lake survey that was done on the lake, looking for submerged cultural resources, a buzzword for shipwrecks. And I'm past chairman of the Lake Champlain Underwater Historic Citizens Advisory Committee. I've been a volunteer diver for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service doing lamprey surveys on the lake. And for the last 25 years, I've been a lay water quality monitor for the Agency of Natural Resources. It's because of these varied experiences that I was asked to coordinate the Adirondack project and kind of be the lead on it. It's also because of these experiences that water quality has always been a really important issue to me. And clearly, as you pointed out, that is one of the major concerns of the folks that are in opposition to this particular project. This project, the Adirondack project, was conceptualized in 2016 when LCT, Lake Champlain Transportation Company, offered to donate a ferry to the state of Vermont to become part of the existing Lake Champlain Underwater Historic Preserve. And that began the collaboration between LCT and the Division for Historic Preservation. The first organizational meeting about actually sinking the Adirondack was done in November of 2017. And just to give you a little background, present at that first meeting were representatives from obviously LCT and the Division for Historic Preservation were the applicants for this project, but the city of Burlington was there as well, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, the U.S. Coast Guard, the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum as well. So we had a good representation of governmental agencies and people interested in the project there. At that first initial meeting, we received absolutely no pushback from those in attendance. To be honest with you, it surprised us a little bit, but we were pleased by it. And that is really why we decided to push on with the project. At that point, we were informed that we needed an Army Corps of Engineers permit, a lake encroachment permit from ANR, Agency of Natural Resources, approval from the U.S. Coast Guard, and approval from the city of Burlington. And over the next 18 months from that meeting on, we have put hundreds and hundreds of hours into this project. We were gathering information, consulting with the governmental agencies I mentioned, principals of other similar projects in other states outside of this jurisdiction, obviously, determining the steps that needed to be taken to ensure that all the environmental concerns were addressed along the way. In addition to that, LCT hired as a consultant a firm called Artificial Reefs International, which has reefed dozens of vessels all over the US and has had no environmental mishaps. They're still actually involved in the project and will be instrumental in the initial stages of sinking the vessel and so on. So it's a bit more than a consulting role, I guess you would say. Basically, all of this was done to complete our due diligence. You know, anytime you have a project of this magnitude and scope, there's a lot, obviously, as you all know, a lot to be done, and we wanted to be sure we were doing it right, and hence all the work. In late January of 2020, we submitted the Army Corps permit application. A couple of weeks later, we submitted the Agency of Natural Resources permit or application. And at that point, per requirement of the Agency of Natural Resources permit, we had to conduct a public meeting. And we did on March 5th, 2020 at the community room in the Burlington Police Station. We had about 60 or 70 people in attendance, maybe a little more than that. And it was an hour and a half long presentation about the economic aspects of the project, the history involved, environmental concerns, and so on. At the conclusion of the program, someone asked for a show of hands of how many were in favor of the project, and almost every hand in the room went up. They then asked how many are opposed. No hands went up. I expect there were a few people that abstained, but overall, it was overwhelming public support for the project at that point. In addition to that type of public outreach, the Division for Historic Preservation put on their website a section explaining this project under the umbrella of the Underwater Preserves. And they had a Q&A, which I believe you've received a copy of. Has a picture of the ferry Adirondack pulling into a slip in the 1950s. In any event, in addition to an explanation of the project, they put a link to just a single question: do you support the project or oppose the project? And to date, we've informed that the A&R permit was put on hold because the House Institutions Committee had expressed concerns about the project, but no specifics were given to us whatsoever. It was just that they opposed the project. Language was at that time was put into the bill, the ACCD appropriation, that said no future capital funding shall be made available for new underwater historic preserves.
Jonathan, can I just interrupt you for a second? I need to tell my committee assistant that Senator Parent is trying to get in the door. Thank you.
Got to go? Okay. You know, after having put in all that work and the hundreds of hours, I'm sorry?
That was
Good to
just a
go?
cough. Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
Okay. So after putting in those hundreds of hours on the part of quite a few people, we were really disappointed that was kind of put in there, if you will. I realize that I'm sure they have the right to do that, but it was very disheartening from our point of view. And obviously I wanted to know what the reason was. So I took advantage of the public records and the YouTube videos and went to the meeting of March 27th, 2020. And it became apparent then that the language that was added was done so specifically to halt the Adirondack project, although the name Adirondack was not mentioned during those meetings. Then shortly after that, that's when COVID hit and everybody's world turned upside down and attentions were diverted elsewhere. So the project stalled a bit at that point for obvious reasons. On May 27th, 2020, we received word that the Army Corps permit had been approved. And other than that, we heard nothing until January of 2021. When we received word that the A&R permit process was once again moving. As you recall, I had said it was tabled because of the language in that initial bill. But it started moving again, and on January 19th, A&R issued a draft permit for the project. The draft permit basically starts a 30-day clock ticking where the public can express concerns, ask questions of A&R about the project. And that 30-day process, only one letter of opposition was received by A&R. And they then had the obligation to review those comments and questions and answer them. And at that point, they would either withdraw the draft permit or approve the final permit, final application permit. And while all this was going on, this review process that I just described, the House Institutions Committee met once again for FY 21-22 on March 18th. And as a result of that meeting, language was put in the bill, which wasn't quite as confusing, I guess you'd say, because they stated the agency shall not authorize the reefing of the MV Adirondack, agency obviously being ACCD. And so they put that language in. We didn't have to guess what that meant. It was pretty clear. And then interestingly enough, on March 25th, shortly after that, the Agency of Natural Resources approved our application for the final permit. Obviously, at that point, it became pretty apparent that the Agency of Natural Resources felt the project did not pose a hazard to the environment. And it was in the public good, which is the onus is on A&R, obviously, to make those determinations. If anybody at any point in the future is interested in looking at the application with all the detail, I'm happy to provide that. But I understand it's well beyond the scope of what you folks are able to do. But it was a lot of information. But getting to the positive aspects and winding down here, positive aspects of the project is that if it's allowed to proceed, it will be an economic boost to the area. I love that you were talking about tourism prior to my statement here. It's a good segue to what we hope will be a good tourism draw for the area. A vessel the size and design of the Addy will draw divers from all over New England and beyond that. You know, as divers, we like to go different places and see different things. And there really, there's not a lot of places to see a vessel like this, certainly in a freshwater environment. Currently, the Underwater Historic Preserve, UHP we call it, attracts about 600 divers who register to dive the preserve every year. There is a registration process. There is no cost associated with that, but it's done to help keep track of how many people are utilizing the resources, that is the shipwrecks. We probably have another, our best guess is another 200 to 300 people that do not register to dive, but dive anyway. And I can say as a dive shop owner, a lot of the people that dive the underwater preserve system come from out of state. We have groups that come back every year from New York City, from Massachusetts, from Connecticut, and other places to dive the preserve. So a vessel of the size of the Addy will simply be an increased draw. And we estimate probably another 250 to 350 divers a year will come here because of the addition of that vessel. And obviously that provides a positive economic impact as tourism. A study conducted by the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing estimated that the average visitor spends $69 a day as a day trip visiting. For people that spend the night, it's about $163 per trip. And in regards to visiting divers, this also often includes a non-diving spouse coming along to enjoy the other great attributes of the state of Vermont, like the parks and so on we were talking about. This obviously can have a really great financial impact. Another great impact of the Adirondack project will have is on the ability to provide diver training at all different levels. It's truly unique for that. The Addy is analogous to a ski area. The green trails on the Addy will be the smokestack, the pilot house, and the hurricane deck. Great for beginning divers, nice, safe platforms. The green trails, blue trails would be the car deck and in that depth range. And the black trails would be, oh, there we go. The black trails, that wasn't me that put that up, correct?
No, it's Denise.
Okay, Denise, thank you. The black trails would be the rudder and the propellers down at the bottom, which will be about 70 feet deep. And then always in Vermont, you have to have the double black diamonds. Well, that would be the ability to penetrate the vessel and go into the engine room area and things like that. And that type of environment is only available to people that have technical divers that have received specialized training. But that all can be done on one wreck, which is a tremendous draw to the area. Another positive impact on the Addy is the creation of fish habitat. Fish like structure, and the Addy will provide plenty of structure. This in turn provides opportunities for fishermen, which again, of course, would help with the economic impact. In our eyes, this project is in the public good for a lot of different reasons. First, it will provide economic boost for the region, and it will do so without risk to the environment, as per the finding of the Agency of Natural Resources. And it will do so at no cost to the people of the state of Vermont. LCT is donating the vessel and the cost of environmental mitigation. People coming here will be exposed to the rich maritime history of Lake Champlain, and it will just be great for the state of Vermont. It really is an opportunity that will not present itself again. We'll never have the stars line up to where a vessel such as this needs to be disposed of, that an organization, a company is willing to pay for all of that, and to help our economy. If the language, we feel, if the language prohibiting the sinking of the Addy is left in the bill, there will be an economic and cultural loss for the people of the state of Vermont. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you very much. Committee, questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. First of all, this is Dick McCormick, if you can't see me. I haven't taken a position on this. I've heard from people whose judgment I respect that they are concerned about it, and for that reason, I thought we should take a look at it. So I'm not trying to make the argument against this. I don't know enough about it to do that, but I do have some questions. One is, how many wrecks are already at the bottom of Lake Champlain? Do we know? Or about?
A couple of hundred, probably. Many of which are in depths that are well beyond sport diving limits. The Underwater Historic Preserve currently consists of 10 vessels, ranging in depth from about 15 feet down to maximum of 110, which is about the maximum in sport diving limits.
Are there other wrecks that could become designated sites that we haven't done that yet?
Yes, there are.
Okay, so money spent on this would be money not spent on that. Correct?
Yes, although currently we're not actually asking for any money from the state for this project whatsoever. As you may be aware, part of the bill from the House Institutions Committee was that they would give the Division for Historic Preservation additional money to open 2 to 3 wrecks. And I believe that figure was about $10,000. The existing underwater preserve, that is the 10 vessels that are currently in it, operate on a budget of about $25,000 annually. That budget has actually been shrinking somewhat over the years, and that money goes to maintaining the buoys, various anchoring systems, public outreach, the publishing of brochures, and of course registration forms, and annual diver museum, Lake Champlain Maritime Museum survey of the wrecks on an annual basis. Again, we're not asking for any funds from the state for this. One of the reasons that we feel that this vessel, and I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question, Senator McCormick, but we feel that this vessel is really unique, and it's a unique opportunity. The other vessels, some of the vessels which the Institutions Committee, the House Institutions Committee appropriated money for, are vessels that don't present the opportunities, nor will they present the tourism draw that this particular vessel will.
Yes, you can
others are,
take that down if you would, please.
I'm sorry?
the other sites are historical wrecks, right? Isn't it? They weren't put there for the purpose of having something to explore. They got there
That
however they got there.
That is correct. There are two of the vessels in the Underwater Historic Reserve were actually scuttled, but that was done, one being a tugboat in Shelburne Bay, the other being the horse ferry in Burlington Bay off of North Beach. Those were intentionally scuttled, obviously not for diving because they were done prior to diving even existing, but that was fairly common practice back then.
Oh, Benedict Arnold scuttled shipboats in
the
1776.
Spitfire is a classic example.
Yeah. Okay, I guess, Mr. Chairman, we are going to hear, I hope, from the Lake Champlain Committee and people they suggest.
Well, I was under the impression that Jonathan was from that entity, but I could be wrong. But we are hearing from other folks that are coming in to talk about this.
Yes, I'm trying to schedule it for next week.
Okay, and Dick, just so you know, I spoke this morning with Chris Bray and with Ginny Lyons and with Mark McDonald, actually, because we were all on LCAR together, and I told them about this project and that there was a difference. The House had taken a position against it. I wasn't sure why. I asked Chris to take a little bit of a look at it to see if there were actually environmental concerns. Jonathan, I did understand you to say, however, that ANR granted the permit. So I have to assume then that environmental concerns were taken care of. The Army Corps of Engineers gave you a permit, which I have to assume means that navigation problems have been taken care of. There any other permit that you had to obtain in order to clear this project?
No, the Coast Guard weighed in on it for the navigation reasons. Obviously, that was part of the Army Corps. Also, the Coast Guard will be involved in the sinking to ensure there's a safe perimeter around the sinking site during the event itself and so on. But as far as permits, those are the two main permits that we need. We do need approval from the city of Burlington and basically all the other permits, the main two, again, ANR and Army Corps, have been secured. And again, I'm happy to, if somebody has concerns about the environmental aspect, I'm happy to provide that information. It was pretty an exhaustive analysis that was done on the Adirondack itself. Paint chips were taken off the Adirondack, different asbestos and PCB potential locations were tested. All of these tests were submitted to the agency and Natural Resources for review in their permit, and all came up within acceptable, very low acceptable levels. So we feel we've done our due diligence along at the assistance of, obviously, the Agency of Natural Resources. And I totally understand that we're spending $2 billion or whatever the number is on cleaning up Lake Champlain. And I totally understand how people would be aghast at the idea of sinking a vessel intentionally in the lake. And I would agree with that for all of my personal experiences that I described in the beginning. And I earn my living from the lake. So the last thing I want to do is do something that would cause harm to the lake. And I truly feel that this does not pose any risk to the health of the lake whatsoever. If anything, again, there are many positive aspects of the project.
Senator Mauser.
I'm concerned about this. This is what bothers me about this. Someone who goes through the process of getting all the permits from all the agencies, and everything has to be met because it's tough to do anything with a lake without getting all the permits. And yet a legislative committee can put a wording in there. It wasn't even an agenda item, and to voice their concern, no, I don't ever recall this happening. That's a terrible precedent to set in the future, regardless of what it is. That would set the precedent that if someone doesn't like something being built or constructed, they would put it in some legislation that would say no, even though the person had gone through thousands of dollars of permitting, and yet we as legislators could say no to it. So this is a very dangerous, I think, a road to go down, because one of the toughest things to do today is getting a permit for anything to do with a lake. I can tell you, I border 67 miles of lake, and I know how tough it is to even build a cottage near the lake today with the septic systems and everything, which is rightfully good. But for us to a committee to put a no into something ahead of the permitting process, and yet the permitting process went through. Wow, we're going down a tough road here. It opens up the door to a lot of litigation in the future. Thank you.
I agree with Senator Mazza.
Well, Jonathan,
And I as well.
this doesn't really require you to make a response, but this was my next phase of this conversation, was to have the committee talk about how strongly do you want to oppose this? And I'm getting a sense, my initial concern, quite frankly, was a committee that is in institutions and has no jurisdiction whatsoever on the policy of an environmental impact has made a decision, and I don't understand how that happened, but
Wow.
I guess just because it falls within historic preservation that it ends up in our committee. And I can certainly understand that there are economic impacts that might end up in the Economic Development Committee. But how a committee on institutions made a decision which apparently is based on an environmental concern, that has me scratching my head somewhat, which Dick McCormick, that's why I mentioned it to Chris Bray this morning.
Wow.
If we're going to really take a hard line in opposing what the House has done, I want to make sure our committees are fully aware of what environmental actions have been taken to get them a permit, because it does disturb me that a decision has been made by a committee that doesn't normally weigh those questions. Jonathan, I'll give you a chance to respond to all of that conversation, but just for the committee's edification, I'm inclined to really push back hard on this question, because I don't think it's appropriate for that language to be in there at all. And if it benefits historic preservation, which I think it would because of the age of the vessel, certainly there are economic arguments to make. And I agree with Jonathan, primarily because I'm also a diver. I have some experience with knowing what that's all about. But that's outside of our committee as well. So I want to make sure our Senate committees are in line with where we are heading if the committee decides we want to push back on this question.
But Mr. Chair, it wasn't requested from the state to spend any money, or it's not even a line item in the budget or anywhere. So how can we take a no when you go through the permitting? I know they permit for docks out in the bay here. They have to go out, they go through the Coast Guard and the state. Once you're permitted, how can we say no to something that's not requesting anything from us? That's my issue. I don't.
Yep, no, it's a valid question. Senator Ingalls.
And I would think that it was probably cheaper for these folks not to even go through all this and just get rid of the boat and just to scrap it. I don't think they would have had all the problem to do that. And I think it's such a bad precedent for anybody else that wants to do something decent for the state to go through all this trouble, only at the end to spend all the money and to be shot down over for whatever reason, for not much of a reason. Just my 2 cents worth.
Jonathan, you're the only one apparently on the committee who's actually listened to the House testimony. So I'm curious as to what was it? You said there were a couple of votes at the public meeting, but not really any major contention.
Yeah, I feel a bit awkward with this because I feel like I've been spying on the House Institutions Committee, and obviously the YouTube. I'm sorry?
They spied on you.
Yeah, obviously. No, so I just reviewed did a little bit of looking and reviewed all of the YouTube videos. And in the first instance where they said no additional funds shall be spent on the underwater preserve, perhaps they didn't know at that point, but we weren't asking for any money. LCT was footing the whole bill for that. In that entire conversation, there was no mention made of the Adirondack specifically. The word was that somebody in the executive branch contacted the House Institutions Committee and asked that this wording be put in the bill. That request was submitted at 11:30 for a 12:30 meeting. And again, the Adirondack was not brought up. It was simply no money for additional preserves. So that right away told me that really wasn't appropriate, because again, there's a permitting process that we went through, and it's totally circumventing the other agencies of the state. So I appreciate Senator Mazza's comments and so on, but the second wording, the second FY 21-22, there was no question. They specifically prohibited the sinking of the Adirondack. My personal opinion, and again, I don't know if this is appropriate, I apologize if it's not, but my personal opinion is that they were lobbied to include that language in both bills. And there was only one letter of opposition to this project during the A&R permit process. And I'm sure you're going to hear from those people as well, as you should. But I think that that's the only one letter of opposition. And that was a joint letter which was signed by members of the Conservation Law Foundation, the Vermont Natural Resources Council, and the Lake Champlain Committee. All of their comments that were submitted in this letter of opposition were reviewed and answered in the Agency of Natural Resources permit process. Line by line, they were addressed. So again, and that's the basis on which we received the permit. So that's why one of the reasons I'm here. I just felt that after all this hard work and literally thousands of dollars on the part of LCT, to have it shot down for no reason other than people didn't like the project, I think is unfortunate.
Okay. Dick McCormick?
Thanks. Again, I want to stress that I have not taken a position at this time opposing this project or supporting the language in the bill as it comes to us from the House. I do think that questions have been raised that the committee ought to look into. I am very reluctant to second guess A&R on scientific questions. We're dealing right now with like with the COVID thing and vaccinations, people who go to the rat-infested slums of cyberspace and trot out studies that show vaccinations do terrible things and so on. I have great respect for science that has withstood the rigors of the scientific method and on that basis enjoys a consensus. So I'm not making an argument that this thing is environmentally dangerous. There are people who make the argument that it is, and I think we ought to at least hear them out. Similarly, my understanding is that there are objections other than contamination. Has to do with the fact that, for example, we have existing sites that are not being exploited, and that perhaps attention ought to go there before it goes here. And I think I presume that Representative Emmons will be visiting with us again. Is that right?
Yes, and we will be having this conversation with him.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that's what we, in terms of objecting Senator Mazza's objections to the House Institutions Committee. She should be confronted with that and give an accounting of her committee's decision.
Yeah, let me say, Dick, I fully intend to give anybody who wants to have a say in this conversation a chance to testify before us. One of our potential handicaps is this committee has nothing to do with science whatsoever. And we shouldn't be making decisions on science without that jurisdictional background. So that's one of the reasons I'd like Chris Bray to take a quick look and to get some reaction.
I concur with that.
Yeah, okay. The other part of that is this is not a request for money. So whether other sites are being exploited or not, I could understand if this project was tied to a sum of money in the capital bill, but it's not. And that to me makes a big difference. And I think Dick Mazza is 100% on the money when he says it's very disturbing that a committee that technically is not being asked for any money and is not possessed with the jurisdiction to have a conversation about the science involved suddenly ups and says, we're going to go this way. Because to me, that's nothing but a political decision. And there's no other way of looking at it. And that does disturb me greatly. So I guess I'm going to walk down that path. We'll give everybody a chance to say whatever they want. But I don't think we should be making a decision based on science, because that's not normally our bailiwick. We can have, we will, Jonathan, just so you know, have more conversation about this. You're welcome to listen in at any point in time. But I do appreciate your coming today. This is, between this and the walleyes, I wouldn't be surprised if these are the two points of contention between our committee and the House committee. But
Well, I want to thank you for your time and your attention. It was great chatting with all of you. And if at any point along the way you have questions, feel free to contact me here at my place of business.
appreciate that. I've never visited there, and my diving has all been over on this side of the state in Lake Willoughby and Crystal Lake. But one of these days I got to get over there and do some diving on some of the wrecks.
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Committee, stick around for just a moment. If you would, Denise, you can take us off of YouTube. That concludes our conversation for the afternoon. Hello, Denise.